John Elway is one of the most accomplished quarterbacks in NFL history. With a resume that nearly any pro QB would die for, it's no surprise he's forever enshrined in the Hall of Fame and remembered as one of the game's greats. There's really no argument against that. However, there was a time when that type of success didn't appear likely. An unforeseen period where he nearly forced his way out of football altogether. An extremely talented player, sure, but someone who would never win a championship. Let's meet those versions of John Elway in the Prism. Oh, hey there. If you didn't know about our Patreon, then you need to change that. You can find tons of exclusive stuff every Monday, like early releases of episodes, our podcast, and so much more. Treat yourself and subscribe. But for now, let's get back to the action. John Elway's been that guy since high school. As a standout multi-sport athlete growing up in California, John got recruited by several major football programs nationwide, but stayed out west and committed to Stanford University. At Stanford, John knew he wouldn't start right away, but believed in his talent enough that he could snag the starting role by mid-season. Maybe a little arrogant, but his skill set was undeniable. John applied pressure from the jump as two QBs ahead of him on the depth chart transferred in training camp knowing they were cooked. Elway's preseason prediction about his role was damn near spot on. He found himself splitting starter reps as Stanford implemented a two-quarterback system. He mostly saw limited looks and matchups, but journalists believe he would eventually be unleashed and lead Stanford to bowl games galore when he escaped the shackles of being a backup. They were mostly right. When John took over as the full-time starter in his sophomore year, his potential looked unlimited. He possessed unique athleticism that allowed him to scramble and extend plays and had a rocket for an arm that let him hit receivers from all angles. Truly an exceptional talent. Couldn't say the same of his supporting cast though. Despite Elway topping Pac-10 conference records, earning All-American honors, and finishing second in the Heisman race his senior season, Stanford never reached a bowl game. For John, maybe his fortune was set to change as he declared for the 1983 NFL Draft and was considered by many as a can't-miss prospect. Just look at some of these quotes regarding his game. Zero flaws, best college quarterback ever seen. Take him, no matter if you already have a franchise-leading QB. All highly successful folks paid to evaluate talent, openly drooling over him. The glazing was unreal. Any team would dream of selecting Elway, but he found himself in a unique draft position, leveraging it like no other player before. Not only was he a stellar football player, but he was also a damn good baseball prospect, good enough for the Yankees to snag in the second round of the 1981 MLB Draft. Thanks to a previous NCAA ruling that allowed him to keep his football eligibility, John spent his college summers playing for the Yankees Class A team. He showed flashes of star potential that led Yankees management to see him as their future starter. The draft structure favors the worst teams, forcing athletes to suck it up and land in often tainted situations or take bread elsewhere to play in a lesser league. Elway had alternatives, with the newly formed USFL offering him a lucrative deal, which he sidestepped, leaving John the choice to skip football altogether and suit up in pinstripes, where Yanks owner George Steinbrenner seemed prepared to drop bags to outbid anyone. The pressing question of football or baseball loomed large before the draft, with John seeming wary of giving an immediate answer, wanting to see how the NFL landscape unfolded. An eye-opening response in itself, given how the picture was already mostly clear. The first overall pick belonged to the winless Baltimore Colts, a team with one of the league's worst offensive lines, coached by known hard-ass Frank Kush, and a franchise under the meddling thumb of owner Robert Irsay. Elway expressed concerns of taking an ass-whooping in the league behind a poor O-line and feared a career going to waste like other top picks before him. Word spread that Elway had told the Colts he wouldn't play for him and would choose baseball unless drafted by a West Coast franchise or a winning team, although he denied those claims. Tired of the ongoing questions about his future, Elway shifted the chatter to his agent Marvin Demoff, who indicated a month before the draft that his client was leaning toward a football career. Demoff dismissed claims that John didn't want to play for the Colts, clarifying that Elway just preferred the West Coast. Meanwhile, the Colts deliberated what to do with their pick, and by the beginning of draft month, Baltimore's brass appeared set on drafting Elway. Great news for the Colts, as neither Elway nor anyone in his camp explicitly said he didn't want to play for them. Can't knock a dude for being comfy where he is. Oh. Just 2 weeks before the draft, Demoff informed the Colts to stay away from his client. What began as a preference to remain on the West Coast crystallized into a full-blown desire to seemingly avoid those losers in Baltimore. To which the Colts said, "Welcome to Loserville, John." If Elway's tremendously sad face for someone who got drafted first overall didn't paint a clear enough picture of how he felt, he made sure to clear up any confusion by shredding the Colts. He claimed he told Baltimore privately several times since Christmas he wasn't going for it, and the org assured him minutes before the draft they had a deal in place. Greedy bastards. John wouldn't let up. He told Baltimore, "You're fucking around with the wrong one, cause this baseball team sounds pretty sweet." Baltimore was stuck sitting patiently. In a shocking twist, owner Robert Irsay called his own shot, sealing a deal with the Denver Broncos in fear of losing his prize pick for nothing. Though caught off guard, Elway seemed pleased to join Denver, ultimately sidestepping the whole debacle. In Denver, he'd have the opportunity to start ASAP, and as one of the most hyped prospects in recent history, the pressure was on from the jump. If year one was any indicator of how his career would play out, media members needed to dial back their expectations mightily. John looked awful and was pulled early in the season by head coach Dan Reeves in favor of backup Steve DeBerg. He got another shot in the same season when DeBerg went out with an injury, but Elway still didn't appear ready for NFL action. Reeves admitted to rushing Elway in his debut year, but after trading DeBerg in the offseason, Denver was ready to test their young QB through trial by fire. Elway flipped the switch. He continued to make some silly mistakes, but he oozed talent as he led Denver to a playoff berth and his first division title in 6 years. Elway wasn't quite on the level of other top-tier quarterbacks in the league just yet, but media members believed he certainly inched closer to that elite status in his second year. The future looked extremely bright for Elway and the Broncos, and although he may not have lived up to those lofty expectations out the gate, John further leapt into stardom over the following seasons. However, greatness comes with the assumption of winning it all, and at a point, Elway became synonymous with falling short of ultimate success. During the '86 season, John led Denver to his first of 3 Super Bowl appearances in 4 seasons. Sounds like an incredible achievement that any QB would dream of, but when you go home empty-handed with each loss becoming more agonizing than the last, critics start to point the finger at you. The '86 season was Elway's breakout year where he fully displayed his magic and showed his penchant for late-game heroics. In a conference championship battle against the Cleveland Browns, Elway led an incredibly clutch 98-yard drive to force overtime before punching the Broncos' ticket to the Super Bowl. Experts were ready to crown Elway no matter the result. Well, as you know, they lost. Elway had a great game, but the team crumbled around him in the second half, despite his efforts to keep their title hopes alive. On to the next. In '87, John followed up his first Super Bowl appearance with an even more impressive MVP-winning season. Vans had journalists writing articles that read like love letters to his game. He was the engine that powered the Broncos, and the team could only go as far as he could, which was again the problem as Denver got smoked by Washington in Elway's second title appearance. With the win, journalists believed it would have pushed Elway closer to his mythical heights, but now, with back-to-back L's, his championship legacy was written as a loser, they are not, which seemed all but cemented after the 1989 season. Statistically, John had his worst regular season since his rookie year, and it seemed as if the pressure got to him. Elway mania had reached absurd heights, with Denver newspapers constantly publishing invasive updates about his life, down to the type of candy he gave out to kids on Halloween. Weird shit. However, in pure criticism of his performance on the field, legendary Steelers quarterback Terry Bradshaw was the most critical. Bradshaw straight up called Elway a pansy and grew tired of how media members and his coaches constantly coddled him throughout his various shortcomings. Journalists were quick to point out the superb supporting cast Bradshaw played alongside in his championship-winning career, but it was tough to deny Elway's inconsistencies, especially in the postseason, which made Denver's run to the Super Bowl that season all the more impressive. Despite a poor regular season by his standards, when the playoffs rolled around, Elway turned into a monster. He overcame the nosy looks at his daily habits and the criticism of his postseason play, delivering some of the gutsiest performances of his career as he led his team back to the ship. And if there were ever a perfect storybook tale for Elway to get his first ring, he had no better opportunity than dethroning surefire Hall of Fame-bound quarterback Joe Montana and the San Francisco 49ers. Not only did Elway suffer another L, but Denver made history in their crushing, lopsided defeat. The loss certainly stung for John, especially in the poor outing, but he wasn't ready to throw in the towel. It's a great sentiment, but media members seemed done with Elway. Journalists questioned why they ever mentioned him and Montana in the same breath. Sure, he's got a big arm, but what else is there to him? With 3 Super Bowl losses under his belt and claims of being a choker, critics wondered if he would ever return to the league's premier game and would go down as a great loser. For nearly a decade, that truly appeared to be the case. Elway and the Broncos suffered through severe up-and-down seasons in which he hardly came close to sniffing another title shot, aside from a conference championship loss in the '91 season. To be fair, Elway had to exit the game due to injury, but journalists thought the nation escaped not seeing him potentially get shredded in the Super Bowl anyway. John still played at a very high level throughout those years, but the hope of winning a title had all but faded away. Then it happened. After yet another disappointing shortcoming season in '96, the organization went all in. I'm talking entire franchise rebrand. But more importantly, the org brought in a slew of new talent believed to be Elway's best supporting cast of his career. To hardly any shock, surrounding a still immensely talented Elway with dependable core players resulted in one of John's best years of his career as Denver marched to the Super Bowl for the first time in 8 seasons. Elway no longer had to play Superman, and the Broncos answered. Denver mostly leaned on the ground game, with star running back Terrell Davis leading the franchise to his first ever title. But no matter if Elway wasn't the star of the show, in the 15th year of his career, he finally captured that elusive Lombardi trophy that hunted him for ages. There was no taking that from him, and critics rightfully had to change their perception. However, at 37, that might have been the last we would see of Elway as he contemplated retirement in the offseason. Or how about going back-to-back on the haters who believed he would never win a single title? John decided to lace him up during the '98 season and yet again led Denver to the Super Bowl where he finished as the game's MVP. One title is sweet, but riding off into the sunset as a 2-time champion allowed John to end his career and be remembered as one of the greats, leaving a reputation as tough as Teflon, which, for a moment, didn't seem likely. Hell, there was a reality where John almost skipped football altogether. He endured the disappointment of getting so close but falling short repeatedly, only to escape the label as a choker in the final years of his career. We can't project how harshly Elway's career would have been judged without a championship, but with 2 Super Bowl rings and a gold Hall of Fame jacket to flex, I guess we'll never know. Thanks for watching this episode of Prism. If you enjoyed this, best believe our channel is filled with plenty of more bangers. So stick around and check some stuff out.